Welcome to the new Workology Go Podcast. In just under 5 minutes, we'll get you the HR and workplace news you need before you start your day 2 times a week. Get ready, get set, and go with the new Workology Go Podcast.
Here are today's HR and workplace news headlines from the Workology Go Podcast. I'm Jessica Miller-Merrill. This podcast is sponsored by HSA Bank. With the U.S. economy operating at pretty much zero unemployment levels, wages and salaries haven't necessarily kept pace with the demand, that is, until now. An article recently published by the Wall Street Journal found that a majority of economists believe we will experience a substantial wage increase in the next 12 months. The majority of these private sector forecasters surveyed, which was 64%, they expected that wages will grow at a somewhat faster rate than previous, and this would be happening over the next year, while almost 6% of economists said wages will grow at a substantially faster rate. The ACS census found that the average household income in the U.S. across the board was just over $60,000 in 2017. In California, that median household income is nearly $72,000. Compared to Texas, which is where I live, it is just over $59,000 and change. Not to leave out the East Coast, but the median income in the state of New York is $65,000. The article that inspired this podcast episode, coming from the Wall Street Journal, is titled, "Nearly 70% of economists expect faster wage growth over the next year," WSJ survey says. We will link to the article along with the median household income data I mentioned in the transcript of this Workology Go podcast. A couple of things that this article has me thinking about. Number one is that it's probably time for HR leaders to think about a compensation study and a survey to determine what the market is dictating and what your biggest competition is paying. A couple of things that this article has me thinking about. Number one, that it's probably time for HR leaders to think about a compensation study and a survey to determine what the market is dictating and what your biggest competition is doing and paying. We should also be looking at other benefits like 401k matches, vacation, flexible scheduling, and things like paternity leave. Secondly, I think it's time for us to think about ourselves for a moment. Let's be selfish. It's not really selfish. We don't ever think about ourselves in HR. Our roles are probably the most demanding they have ever been, not to mention all the additional responsibilities we now have. In addition to recruiting and retention, we're looking at much more in-depth technology implementations while also staying up to date on the latest economic changes, employment laws, and just regular old HR responsibilities. I recently talked to career coach Kathleen Jewell, and she shared with us the right time for us in HR to think about asking our bosses for an increase in our salaries without having to find a new job. Here's what she had to say.
Well, number one, you want to keep your eye out for higher level jobs within your company. Because sometimes a way to get a substantial raise is to move sideways in the company. And I've seen a lot of HR professionals move into other departments such as operations, training if they have a separate training department. And so you want to post for higher level jobs. But another great idea, and I've had a number of clients do this, they actually propose a new position that does not currently exist but really is necessary. So, for example, one of my HR clients who was in training under the HR banner decided that the company needed a learning management director. And this is a person who would basically catalog all the job knowledge for the entire company and be a resource to the training department and the HR department. And he actually proposed that job and got that higher level job. And it was a raise for him from about the high 70s to the low 100s.
I like it. I think this is interesting because not once did you say, ask for more money in your current role. Do you think that's an option, or do you think that's a career killer?
You absolutely want to do that, but timing is everything, and the performance review is the obvious time to go in, and you want to come in armed with information. You want to be armed with information about what are other people being paid at your level, and so you want to do your research on salary.com and make sure that you are being paid equitably for what your title currently is. The other thing is you want to bring in your achievement list and show how you are actually operating outside your position. Most people who have been in a job for, let's say, more than 4 or 5 years are actually operating one level above their title. And if you can convince management that you are actually operating at a different level, you can really substantiate maybe a $20,000 increase in pay.
Catherine goes on to share that many of her clients have been able to increase their salaries by $20,000, even $30,000 per year, and are able to stay with their current employer instead of starting at a new place, which I think sometimes it's really hard to leave a place that we enjoy. Maybe we like the people, the commute is good, but we don't feel like we are being stretched enough, or we could use a little bit of a pay bump. Maybe we haven't gotten that previously. I think we've been lucky in the last few years in that we haven't seen compensation take a huge jump. However, retention is becoming more important, and that standard 3% increase at annual review time is no longer enough. In order to keep our people, we do really need to think about aggressive compensation increases for employees.
With health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts, health reimbursement arrangements, COBRA, and commuter benefits, HSA Bank is simplifying the health account experience for over 35,000 employers and 2.7 million members alike, inspiring everyone to own their health. Learn more at hsabank.com.
And that's this episode of the Workology Go podcast, sponsored by HSA Bank. We're your go-to for HR and workplace news. I'm Jessica Miller-Merrill. Thank you for listening.
To learn more about the Workology Go podcast, subscribe to us on Apple, Google, and Stitcher. Our podcast is also available on Alexa and Google Home. Learn more at workology.com/Go podcast and access this episode's resources, links, and reports for more information.